When my wife died, my son told me to pack my things and find somewhere else to die. That's how it started. 40 years of fatherhood reduced to one cruel sentence. I stood there in my own living room suitcase, half-zipped, heart pounding in my ears. Derek's face, my son's face, was a stranger's that day. He said I was old, confused, that I couldn't handle responsibilities anymore. Then he dropped the line that shattered me. Dad, Mom left everything to me. The house, the accounts, all of it. You'll be taken care of. Somewhere else. Somewhere else. That phrase still echoes like a draft in an empty room. I left that night with 2 suitcases, my wife's photo, and the feeling that the life I'd built had slipped through my fingers like oil. 2 months earlier. Back then, I was Tom Miller, 67, retired firefighter from Madison, Wisconsin. I'd fought fires for 30 years and thought I understood loss until I lost Linda. Linda was everything I wasn't: calm, sharp, and methodical. She handled our investments, the bills, the paperwork. I handled the leaky faucet and grilled burgers on Sundays. We'd built a small but comfortable life together, a white house with blue shutters, a cherry red Chevy in the garage, and our son Derek, our pride and frustration rolled into one. When Linda's cancer came back, we didn't talk about wills or trusts. We talked about little things. Her favorite pie, old movies. She'd hold my hand and whisper, "Promise me you'll let Derek help you when I'm gone." So when she passed, I took that literally. Derek came up from Chicago 2 days after the funeral, his wife Jessica in tow, both of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a real estate brochure. He hugged me stiffly and said, "Dad will handle everything. Don't worry about a thing." For a moment, I believed him. He called the bank, met with Linda's lawyer, and asked me to sign routine forms. I didn't read them. I was grieving, numb, desperate to make the paperwork end. He smiled the way people do when they're rehearsing sympathy. "You just rest, Dad. I've got this." A week later, he changed the locks. I came home from the grocery store to find my key no longer fit. Derek was sitting on the porch holding a clipboard. "Dad, I had to make some adjustments," he said. "Mom's will was clear. Everything's in my name now. It's simpler this way." Simpler for who, I asked. "For everyone," he said. "You can stay a few days until I figure out what's best." "What's best?" I laughed. "You mean what's convenient for you?" His voice sharpened. "Dad, you're 70 next month. You forget things. You left the stove on twice last week. You're not safe here alone." That wasn't true, but grief had slowed me, dulled me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was slipping. Then Jessica appeared with her perfect posture and pitying smile. "We found a senior community near Lakeview. It's got activities, meals, other people your age. It'll be good for you." "Good for me," I repeated. "You mean out of your way?" Her smile didn't falter. "It's already arranged. You'll love it." That night I stared at Linda's old armchair, the one Derek said he'd donate, and realized the house already felt like it belonged to someone else. 3 days later, I checked into a motel off Highway 51, the kind with buzzing lights and a smell of cheap detergent. $49 a night. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at a faded painting of a lake and whispered to Linda's photo. I kept my promise. I let him help. It didn't feel like help. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Dad, I'll transfer a little money soon. Don't spend too much. We have to budget the estate carefully." The estate. It used to be our life. Now it was his asset. I spent my mornings walking through Madison's downtown, eating cheap diner breakfasts, listening to retirees talk about grandkids. I kept wondering if I'd missed something, if maybe Linda had left everything to him out of practicality. She always said Derek understood modern finances. Still, something gnawed at me. Linda had been too careful, too thoughtful to just erase me with a pen. So I called the law office, Cunningham and Wells, and asked for Linda's attorney, Mary Cunningham. Her voice on the phone was kind familiar. "Tom, we expected to see you after the reading. Derek said you were traveling. How are you holding up?" "Traveling," I repeated. "Mary, I've been right here." A long silence. "Then why don't you come in tomorrow morning?" That night I couldn't sleep. I thought about all the fires I'd fought, the heat, the smoke, the panic, and realized grief was worse. Fire you can see, betrayal burns colder. I arrived at her office the next day with shaking hands. Mary looked at me like someone seeing a ghost. "Tom, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize Derek hadn't included you." She opened a thick manila folder, flipped through papers, and frowned. "This doesn't make sense. The copy Derek filed with the court looks different from this one." "Different how?" "The signatures, the date. Tom, your wife updated the will 3 months before she passed. You should have inherited the house and the majority of the assets. My throat tightened, so he lied. Mary sighed. I'm afraid it looks that way. But let's not jump ahead. We'll verify the documents and then we'll take action. Walking out of her office, the November air bit my cheeks, but it was the first time I'd felt awake in weeks. Derek had underestimated me. Maybe I was old, but I wasn't finished. Linda once told me you were born to run toward the fire. And that's exactly what I planned to do. Next stop, the truth. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise in that motel room, the air stale, the heater coughing like an old dog. I sat at the edge of the bed staring at the worn carpet and thought about all the times I'd told Derek that honesty mattered more than ambition. I thought I'd raised a good man. Turns out I'd raised a clever one. Mary called around 9. Tom, can you come in today? I've verified the documents. Bring any papers Derek had you sign after Linda's funeral. I didn't have many. Just a few forms I barely remembered. When you've buried your wife, everything blurs into ink and grief. But as I handed them to Mary, she frowned so hard her glasses slid down her nose. These aren't copies of the trust paperwork, she said quietly. They're transfer of ownership documents. Derek had you sign over power of attorney and partial deed rights. My stomach dropped. You mean I gave him permission to steal from me? She nodded grimly. That's exactly what I mean. Mary called a contact Detective James Porter, a financial crimes investigator. He was in his late 40s, wore a windbreaker, and had that cop calmness that makes you feel seen but not judged. He listened, asked questions, and then said, Mr. Miller, this looks like a textbook elder exploitation case. If you're willing, we can build something solid, but we'll need your cooperation. I didn't hesitate. You tell me what to do. That night, I sat in the diner across from the courthouse, nursing a black coffee while Mary spread papers across the booth like battle plans. Linda's last amendment changed everything she said, tapping the original will. She left you the house, 70% of all assets, around $20 million, and left Derek $9 million, but conditionally. Conditionally, I asked. Yes. The clause reads, my son's inheritance is contingent upon his respect, care, and support for his father following my death. I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. She knew I whispered. She knew exactly what he'd try. Mary's eyes softened. Your wife was very thorough, Tom. She trusted you to stand up for yourself when the time came. For the first time since Linda's funeral, I felt something other than loss. I felt purpose. Detective Porter suggested we stage a conversation. We'll have you visit your son under the guise of reconciliation. Bring up the house, the money, and ask him to explain the will. With your permission, we'll record everything. It felt strange plotting against my own son. But I'd spent a lifetime fighting fires that started small and turned deadly because people looked the other way. I wasn't looking away this time. 2 days later, I drove to the house that used to be mine. Derek answered the door in a polo shirt, barefoot, holding a tumbler of whiskey at noon. Dad, he said, genuinely surprised. Didn't expect you. I figured we should talk, I said, forcing a smile. About the estate. Jessica appeared behind him, tense as piano wire. Maybe this isn't the right time. It's the perfect time, I interrupted. I just want clarity. He led me to the living room. My chair, the recliner Linda had given me for my retirement, was gone. The smell of her lavender candles had been replaced by whatever expensive scent Jessica favored. Everything familiar had been scrubbed out like I'd never lived there. So Dad, Derek said, sitting across from me, what do you want to know? I just need to understand what Mom's will actually said, I replied. I was too out of it to remember. You said everything went to you. He nodded confidently. Right. She wanted to make sure the estate stayed intact. You're not exactly good with finances, Dad. You'd have burned through it. I forced a chuckle. You think so? He smirked. Come on, you never even balanced a checkbook. It's better this way. You don't have to worry. Better for who, Derek? I asked quietly. He sighed, impatient. Dad, don't make this harder than it is. You've had a good run. I'll make sure you're comfortable. And what if that's not enough? Then you'll have to adjust, he said coldly. Mom trusted me with the money because I know what I'm doing. You're just old school. That's when Detective Porter, sitting in a van 2 houses down, caught the line we needed. Mom trusted me with the money. I pressed a little harder. Can I see the will again? He shrugged. I shredded the extra copies. Didn't think you'd care. Shredded. Yeah, it's all digital now. I'm the executor. You don't need to worry about it. My hand trembled. I see. He leaned forward, his tone softening into manipulation. Look, Dad, this doesn't have to be ugly. You've had a long, good life. I'm just continuing what you built. I stared at him, realizing he believed that. In his mind, this was his inheritance, his right. I smiled faintly. You're right, son. I taught you to take charge. Guess I shouldn't be surprised you took me at my word. He chuckled, relaxed, a predator thinking the prey had surrendered. 2 days later, the police raided his office downtown. Forgery, fraud, elder exploitation, attempted coercion. They froze. His accounts seized his laptop and recovered several falsified documents, including a fake version of Linda's will with altered signatures. Jessica's name was on the file too. When Detective Porter called to tell me I didn't cheer, I didn't even smile. I just sat there staring at the wall, thinking about the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Porter must have sensed my silence. Mr. Miller, you did the right thing. Most people never stand up for themselves. I nodded slowly. Yeah, but it doesn't feel like winning. The story hit the local news within hours. Tech consultant charged with defrauding his father. My phone buzzed nonstop, old friends, former colleagues, even my firehouse buddies reaching out. Most said the same thing. Good for you, Tom. Teach him a lesson. But that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. I wanted to know how a father and son could end up on opposite sides of a courtroom. I called Mary. What happens now? We let the system run its course, she said. You'll get the assets back, the house, everything Linda intended for you. But Tom, what me never surety or during seven? You'll also get a choice what to do with your son once justice is served. That night, as I sat alone in the motel with the sound of sirens in the distance, I realized something. You can fight a fire and still lose the house. The next battle wasn't about property anymore. It was about what was left of us. 3 weeks later, I was back in the house I'd built with my own 2 hands. The locks had been changed, the smell of fresh paint hung in the air, and the creak of the old wooden stairs felt like a familiar friend welcoming me home. Linda's garden was overgrown, but the rose bushes she planted still bloomed stubbornly. She'd called them hope in the dirt. I stood there for a while, pruning dead stems, thinking about everything that had burned down between me and my son. The media had moved on. Derek was out on bail waiting for trial. His lawyer kept calling, asking if I'd consider leniency, and Mary, bless her, kept telling me I didn't owe him anything. But fathers are built different. We don't stop caring just because someone stops deserving it. That night I sat in Linda's old recliner, now back where it belonged, and opened her Bible. Inside, on a yellowed note in her handwriting, were 6 words that hit me harder than any court verdict ever could. Forgive him before it kills you. I'd seen her write that during our hardest years, when Derek was in his reckless 20s, when we nearly lost the house once before. She always believed that holding anger was like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die. So the next morning I asked Mary to set up a meeting with Derek's attorney. We met in a quiet conference room downtown. Derek looked smaller somehow, thinner, older. Gone was the slick confidence. In its place, the fragile shame of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. He couldn't meet my eyes, Dad, he said softly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to hear me out. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. Go ahead. When Mom died, he began, I panicked. Everything felt like it was slipping away, the house, the business, my marriage. Jessica kept saying we needed stability, that we deserved it after all I'd done for the family. I thought, if I took control, I could keep it all together. By lying to your father, I asked. He swallowed hard. By surviving. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd make it right once things settled. But then it got easier to justify. I told myself you didn't need that kind of money, that I was protecting you from yourself. That's the same thing you told the cops, I said quietly. He looked up, then eyes red, jaw trembling. I'm not proud of any of it. I just didn't know how to stop. Every time you called, every time I saw the house, I felt this mix of guilt and resentment I couldn't explain. I leaned back, exhaling. Son, I spent 40 years putting out fires other men started because they thought they could control everything. You can't control fire. You respect it or it burns you. He nodded slowly. So what now, you pressing charges? That's not up to me, I said. That's up to the DA. But I did tell them I don't want to testify. Not because you deserve it, but because your mother would have wanted me to leave room for redemption. He blinked in disbelief. You're dropping it. I'm not dropping it, I corrected. I'm letting the system do what it needs to do. But I won't fight you anymore. I already won what matters. He frowned. What's that? My peace. Over the next few months, life found a rhythm again. The house got quieter. The paper stopped calling. Detective Porter came by once to update me Derek had pled guilty to fraud, was cooperating with the investigation, and would serve time in a minimum security facility. Jessica had filed for divorce and left town. Most guys in your position would have gone for blood, Porter said as we walked the garden. You sure you're okay with this ending? I smiled faintly. When you've been a firefighter as long as I was, you learn something important. Sometimes putting out the flames isn't the victory, keeping the foundation standing is. He nodded. You're one hell of a man, Tom. That spring, I reopened the community center down the street, the one Linda used to volunteer at before her illness. We renamed it the Miller Foundation, focusing on elder financial awareness. We held free workshops for retirees, helping them understand Will's power of attorney and how to avoid being taken advantage of, even by family. At the first session, I stood in front of 30 seniors, men and women, who looked a lot like me, and told them my story. When my wife died, I thought the worst day of my life was behind me. But grief does strange things to people. It blinds you to the sharks swimming in your own bloodline. They laughed softly at that, but they understood. I continued. I'm not here to make you fear your kids. I'm here to tell you to protect them from the temptation that comes when love and money get tangled. Set up your wills right. Read every line. And for God's sake, don't sign anything when your heart's still broken. The applause was gentle, but it felt real. For the first time in months, I felt useful again. 6 months later, Derek was released early for good behavior. He didn't come straight to me. I didn't expect him to. But one morning, I found a letter in my mailbox, neat handwriting, my son's signature at the bottom. It read, Dad, I won't ask you to forget, but I hope someday you'll let me earn a place at your table again. Mom was right. Greed is a fire that doesn't warm you. It burns you alive. Thank you for not letting it burn me completely. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into Linda's Bible right next to her note, Forgive him before it kills you. That evening, I stood on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air smelled like rain and cut grass. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel old, just alive. I poured myself a cup of coffee, raised it toward the fading sky, and whispered, We did good, Lynn. We made it through the fire. Inside, the phone pinged with messages, people commenting on the community center's video online, thanking me for sharing my story. I smiled and hit record one more time. If you've listened this far, I said into the microphone, maybe you're someone who's been betrayed by family, or maybe you've made mistakes you're trying to fix. Either way, remember this: forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It means you stop letting pain make your choices. And if you're a parent, don't just leave behind your money, leave behind your wisdom. It's worth more than any inheritance. I paused, letting the silence breathe. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've got your own story, well, I'd like to hear that too. I smiled, not bitter, not broken, just finally at peace. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about rebuilding yourself so completely they no longer have power to hurt you.